Hello, listeners. Welcome back to a new episode of Reflections with Tasneem. I hope life is treating you well, and we're halfway through Ramadan already. So, happy Ramadan to my fellow Muslim listeners. I hope Allah grants us our prayers and wishes and accepts our fast. And also, if there is any Chinese listeners, happy Horse Year to you. These two events have coincided, and I've been planning to talk about types of calendars in the world and present some of them with details. But I didn't have enough time or spirit for such topic, to be honest. That is why I didn't upload last week's episode. Anyway, if I came across your mind, just remember me with a prayer. It would really make me glad. Anyway, today's episode is about hope, grief, and despair. These abstract human feelings, as depicted in Emily Dickinson's Hope is the Thing with Feathers and Max Porter's debut novel Grief is the Thing with Feathers. From my opinion, of course, this analogy. And the inspiration behind this episode is that I watched the brilliant adaptation of this novel around 2 weeks ago, starring the talented Benedict Cumberbatch. And when the movie ended, I was left with a question in my mind, which I believe is the most the movie's debate. That is the distinction between grief and despair, especially after one of family members dies suddenly, and how to cope with this loss. It's only when I googled the movie that I began to collect the dots. I realized that it resembles Dickens' poem. So I'll introduce both writers before diving into the analysis. Starting with Emily Dickinson. She's my beloved favorite author. She's one of America's greatest poets. And most of her work are published posthumously. She was a very home oriented person. Anyway, she broke traditional 19th century rules along with other American poets by using unconventional punctuation such as dashes and non-standard capitalizations to create meaning, poses, rhythms. She uses also slang rhymes to create subtle and off-color effects, and she's pretty much known for her epigrammatic brevity. That is short, dense lines that pack intense emotional and philosophical meaning into spaces. I will try to point out this in the poem when I read it. Despite her quiet life, because she lived a quiet life, she explored vast and profound subjects such as death and immorality, and nature, of course, using flora and fauna as complex metaphors for human experience, and the inner self. Emily Dickinson is from Amherst, Massachusetts, and so she is remembered as the myth of Amherst, and as a repulsive figure who spent much of her adult life within the family home and famously dressed only in white. Hope is the Thing with Feathers is one of her famous poems. I'd like to point out something as well, that it is debated that most of her novels are edited in order to fit the era at that time. As I told you, her poems are published after her death. So probably, yeah, they are edited in order to fit the ideologies of the era. Anyway, here is Hope is the Thing with Feathers. I'll read it and then just point out some of my ideas. Hope is the thing with feathers. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. And sweetest in the gale is heard, and sore must be the storm that could abash the little bird that kept so many warm. I've heard it in the chillest land and on the strangest sea, yet never in extremity it asked a crumb of me. The poem is divided into three stanzas. Um, each stanza is 4 lines, portrait, and it is an extended metaphor, meaning that she uses hope, okay, an abstract thing, and She compares it to a bird, a little bird throughout the whole poem. Hope is a petite bird that perches in the soul and sings. It has a beautiful chirp and never stops at all. It is constant. It is there when you need it. And sweetest in the gale's heard, even in the storm. You can even in storm, even in hardships, you can still sense hope. There is hope lurking. And despite the harshness of the storm, it cannot push away this little bird that provides warmness and kindness for human beings. She says, the first person, in the first person speaker, that it is heard in the chillest land. It is not solely on a certain location, but it is covered. It's everywhere. And on the strangest sea, in every land and seas. This bird does not need is selfless. It doesn't need anything from you. That was Emily Dickinson's Hope is a Thing with Feathers. So let's just wrap my ideas about it before looking into Max Porter's. So what I'm trying to say is Dickinson's poem depicts hope as a bird. This bird is hope. Selfless, permanent. It has a grace-like presence and is lurking always. It's always there. Moving to Max Porter. He is a modern British writer, and Grief is the Thing with Feathers is what he's most notable for. He won a prize for it, and it is actually based on his actual story when he lost his father when he was a child. So the novel is divided into. It's not. I wouldn't say it's a novel because it's more like a novella. It's only 95 pages long and is divided into three parts. And I honestly enjoyed the because I could get it. It moved chronologically from part one to and till the resolution. Unlike the novel feels fragmented at first for me, of course, because it has many speakers: the dad, the boys, and then the crow. It's not until the second part that I get it. Okay, throughout the his novel. Okay, grief is depicted as the crow, and it's not just an ordinary crow. It is a crow, a walking crow, like a human being. Okay, it has legs, and it's a character. I forgot to tell you that most of the novel is related to Ted Hughes' poetry collection of crows because the dad is an illustrator of this collection. And also that's it. If you know, crows are known culturally as symbols of death and brevity, but in Porter's novel it is depicted as a feeling, grief, and not so good feeling but not so bad feeling. So it's grief. And strangely, grief is not a constant feeling like hope. It's a temporary one. And grief says in the novel, "I'm here not to stay." That his job ends once his job ends once it's once if he tells the dad that his job ends when his job ends he'll leave. When you don't need me, I'll leave. So um let's get back to the qualities of grief as depicted in The Crow. The Crow is very rude, very demanding. It's not gentle at all, calling them names, calling the dad names, insulting the dad, and forcing family to confront their pain. Another thing I've noticed, Porter does not give names to his characters. He says the dad, he says the boys, the mother, the crow. None of these characters are actually named, and my opinion, this generalization as the ultimate experience of human loss. I mean, we all lose someone dear to us. We all go through loss and pain and death. And so this generalization serves this idea very well. All right. Another thing is the crow. The crow's arrival came to change these characters, the dad and the boys, and time passes, but grief does not last. I mean, you still can miss someone you lost, but it's not as intense as when it happened. And so it it doesn't disappear actually. It doesn't disappear you. It doesn't, on the contrary, it transforms you. The huge, filthy bird becomes something else to the boys when they grow up. A memory, maybe a part of them. And the difference between uh, grief and despair. This idea I wanted to talk about. Well, grief. There is this scene in the movie that caught my attention. It was at the end, not at the end of the movie, but near the end, when at the door there was a person knocking. When the boys wanted to open the door, the dad told him no. And I believe this person was despair because when the dad opened the door, he stepped in and attacked him in a brutal, vengeful way. It almost killed him, but he was rescued by the crow, Grief. And so this monster who attacked the dad, in my opinion, is despair. So, what's the difference between despair and grief? Despair arises out of hopelessness and it leads us to giving up. It can feel a lot like grief, they're very similar, but there is one important difference. Grief is transient and despair gets us stuck in our places. And so grief also still carries the potential for healing and meaning, while whereas despair is the absence of hope. Also, despair often feels like complete emptiness, apathy, or numbness, which the dad felt when he was stuck at his drawings, when he started drinking and numbing himself just to forget the pain of missing his wife, his deceased wife. So, this is my opinion about the movie, about the novel. I tried to make the connection. It's not how I depicted, I'm sure, but I hope you like the episode. If you have any comments regarding the episode or any recommendations, please contact me. Thank you so much and see you next time.